Yeah, and I remember watching that first episode and like, man, the CW has this thing about making the male counterpart less than like
Yeah.
to put their female lead on a pedestal, and like you don't need to do that to make the character look good.
Yeah.
Like to me, they just made Batman negligent, which as a
Yep.
Batman fan,
Same.
I took issue with that. Like he is anything but negligent. I don't know, but that's my 2 cents on a show that I watched like 3 episodes of. Sucks too because I like the costume. She actually looked
Yeah.
pretty good in the costume.
Yeah. I always thought like I get why they had to make the cape shorter, but like the cape was just a little bit too short. But I understand for like mobility reasons why they had to do that.
Hmm. All right. Well, we can probably start getting things rolling here. Oops, that's the wrong thing. Oh, it's. I mean, I'm not that surprised that like nobody's talking about the Birds of Prey Black Label book because I didn't realize it was coming out until like the week before.
Yeah, because it just kept getting delayed because it was supposed to come out, I think, near the time of the movie. Then it got pushed back like a month, and then it got pushed back another month. It kind
Yeah.
of seemed like DC just wanted to like forget about it too.
Yeah, I can't help but feel like whatever they did with it though really played with like the pacing because
Yeah.
it wasn't I mean like you saw what I had said about it in the review. I
Yeah.
didn't think it was bad. There were definitely some good elements, but it certainly didn't have the time it needed to breathe.
Yeah.
I think we should be good to go. If I have the right episode number, I think I have the right episode number. Who knows? Somebody will
Yeah.
hopefully correct me, but we'll get it rolling.
Yeah.
Hello, citizens of the Dark Knight Nation, and welcome to the 43rd episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co-host in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics, whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations. We hit it all. This week, I am joined for the first time in a while by part-time comic book journalist of the comics Bookcase, Taylor. Man, what's going on?
Nothing much. Happy to be here again since probably like over a year.
It's been a while. The last thing we had you on for was Batwoman Elegy, actually, right?
Yeah, I think right before that was before Elseworlds came out, so that was like 2018. So it's been a while.
It has been a while, man. I sometimes I forget how long, because I took that big gap of time off. So I always forget that I've been doing this for like 2 years now, even though I was gone for like half a year. But I don't know. To me, that those 6 months didn't happen.
Yeah,
But
time flies.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing I do want to let the people know is they can find a link in the description to your author's page on the comics Bookcase, where they can read all of your articles from your work on Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman to JSA Black Rain. And you did one on the Joker Killer Smile as well, if I remember correctly. So do you want to give people a little bit of a spiel on the type of stuff you like to write over the comics Bookcase?
Yeah, it's actually just whatever comes to my mind. Like, just I like writing about books I like. I don't like writing about books that I don't like because I feel it's just very like for me, like it doesn't really register in my mind to write about books that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But I used to write I still write sometimes, but like I've had a lot of like writer's block recently, so I've gotten like more time in between my articles than both. Like when I started, I was writing like on a monthly basis, but now I write like every other month or every 2 months, just because I just don't know what to write about.
Yeah, it definitely gets that way. Hopefully, the conversation will verbally help to start jog up some thoughts, and hopefully the people that are watching this now can go and check out some future articles it's very soon. So.
I actually have one coming out soon, maybe in the next couple days.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure that everybody's watching is out on the lookout, and we can get rolling into the main topic for today. So as everybody can clearly tell from the thumbnail and whatnot, we're going to be discussing the greatest comic book adaptations of all time, clearly as of right now, June 9th, 2020. So if you're coming June 9th, 2021, don't at me because things could change.
Who knows? Everything is pushed back.
Yeah,
so.
right. Yeah, how much are we even gonna get by then? What, maybe Wonder Woman and Black Widow?
Wonder Woman and Black Widow. I think everything's pushed back because production is halted on almost everything.
Jesus, I just want my Batman movie, man.
Yeah,
that's all I want. But yeah, so I think that it's prudent to first say, everybody, if you end up enjoying this video, leave a like, subscribe down to the channel below, and comment along. Let us know what you're thinking as we engage in this conversation. But Taylor, being the guest, I'm curious, what's the first adaptation that you want to talk about that you think is a contender to be one of the greatest comic book adaptations of all time?
I think it's a big one that a lot of people talk about. It's Batman the Animated Series. It's like the mother of comic book, maybe next to Batman 66, when in terms of like animated shows, it's X-Men and Batman.
Yeah, it shaped a lot of people, and my generation included. That was kind of my first prolonged exposure to Batman personally, and that shaped my love of the character, I think, more than anything else. I remember as a kid having the Sub-Zero movie and the Batman Beyond Return of the Joker movie on VHS, and I've probably seen them more times than I have limbs, and I didn't think anything of it back then.
Yeah, I had a VHS too, actually. I had a VHS of like the first few episodes, like POV and Be a Clown. Like it was just a compilation of episodes, and I'm like, this is really good. And what's great about Batman is that like you can see like the animation as it went like through the years. It got better and better because Bruce Timm just got better and better.
Yeah, I mean the great thing about that show is that it really revolutionized children's cartoons and cartoons in general, to a degree that it's fairly respectable for an adult to say, hey, I still like Batman the Animated Series. I'll still go back and watch it. But beyond that, there was something really smart about the way they handled writing duties that you hadn't seen in cartoons prior. They certainly had to maintain a certain rating, for the daytime children's television, but they were never really shy about what they were implying in the stories. And I think that's one of the reasons why people, even, our age and beyond, can still connect with the material.
Yeah, it's like, I think that's the mastery of like Paul Dini and those writers, because Paul Dini is just a great writer. He's very good at thematics, and I think that's the strongest part of Batman the Animated Series, just all the themes that it has and how like it drives all the stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up Bruce Timm and the visuals. There's something about the red sky as it starts to get dark, and the way that I think it was what they had done everything over like a black background or something like that. And they had like colored over it or whatever, and that's kind of what helped to establish the visual tonality of the show.
Yeah. And also, let's not forget like the Great Heart of Ice episode that pretty much redefined Mr. Freeze.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, that episode single-handedly turned Mr. Freeze into, I think, a number of folks' greatest Batman villains, almost inexplicably, because there's not a lot of great Mr. Freeze within the pages of comic books. And it's something that you don't really think about, because when you think Mr. Freeze as a Batman fan, 9.9 times out of 10, you're pointing at Heart of Ice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great show. I mean, not to mention it heralded the creation of Renee Montoya in the comics, and of course Harley Quinn, who, for better or for worse, is now the fourth pillar of DC Comics.
Yeah.
It did a lot for the industry, and I think that it brought an entire generation of people into not only an awareness, because I think a lot of people were aware of most of these characters, but they kind of provided them with an opportunity to really touch base with why these characters are special and why they're important.
Yeah, it's enough said it, but like I know it kind of I don't want to say fell apart, but definitely got weaker in the last season
Mm,
because well, season 4, also called the New Batman Adventures, like that's when like they changed, like they redesigned everything,
mm.
and it got kind of jumbled. But there's still some great episodes to come out of that season, like Over the Edge, which is the one where
Yep.
Barbara Gordon died and it was like a scarecrow hallucination. That one was great. But like
Yep.
the best thing to come out of that season to me is just the redesign of Scarecrow, where they like
Mm.
made him like a preacher, like a skeleton preacher. And I had Jeffrey Combs, the reanimator, voice him. That's like perfect for
Yeah,
Scarecrow.
I think I'm in a minority, but unapologetically that I really loved the revamped character designs. I thought it really brought something different. Aside from the fact that we got a couple of new characters more prominently, but I'm not a big yellow oval Batman fan. I understand the utility of it, with the
Yeah.
extra armor and whatnot, but
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it, but I know why some people aren't.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, but so I tend to lean towards that fourth season's design for Batman, with the muted color palette. I mean,
yep.
even the belt is a very like army yellow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a great poll, and it was certainly on my list. It defined Batman for a generation and beyond, even to the point where a lot of comic book writers are still trying to homage it. So
Yep.
excellent
And,
pick.
and it also led to the Arkham games, which are pretty much like an extension of the animated series.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think those games again, if we're going to talk about redefinition, the way they sort of redefined what people expect from RPG games is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it great poll. Obviously, it stems out into a lot. I think it's easy enough for me to start with what the thumbnail clearly homages in Avengers Endgame. The
Yeah.
movie certainly wasn't perfect. It definitely had its flaws, but I honestly don't think I've seen anything better on a screen than what I saw in the last hour of that movie.
Yeah, that was nuts. Like here in Minnesota, like people in the theaters are always very quiet. Like they
Mm.
never react. But the moment when Cap got the hammer, everyone erupted.
Hmm. I mean, like I said, that whole last hour was like this. I mean, I either cried 3 times or I cried for the whole hour. I can't figure it out yet. I just know that the
Yeah.
rationale behind the crying changed every like 20 minutes. It was, happy crying to sad crying to happy crying. You know what I mean? And it was an emotional roller coaster. And I think a lot of really big cultural phenomena on television and in film tends to really come up short in the conclusion to what they're
Game of
doing.
Thrones.
You see Game of Thrones,
Uh-huh.
Dexter. I mean, Lost was kind of shaky, anyways.
Yeah.
But a lot of those big cultural things tend to really flub up the ending. And man, the MCU could have ended right there, and I think pretty much everybody would have been okay with
Yeah.
it.
It was it was a really good ending. As you said, like of course you could anything with time travel you can pick apart till the cows come home.
Mhm.
Like time travel is such a flimsy subject, and it really didn't help that the writers and the directors disagreed on the time travel properties.
Mhm.
But like it was such a good movie, especially that last hour. It was just something out of like a Hickman Avengers comic.
Yeah, no, there was something about the final on your left moment and the Avengers assemble moment that just
Yeah,
man, every comic book fan in there wasn't a dry eye in the place.
yeah,
It was nuts, and it had so much to it. I mean, even that really quick shot of the A Force kind of banding together, and
yeah,
immediately I remember watching that 3 to 4 second shot, and I was like, man, I would watch an A Force movie right now if you gave it to me.
yeah. And also all the I know people criticize movies for fan service. Like sometimes fan service, like for example, Rise of Skywalker is not really handled that well.
Mm,
But for I think it was handled pretty well in Avengers Endgame, especially like the eras that they chose, like the first Avengers movie and Winter Soldier with the great like Hail Hydra moment
hmm
that
Yeah.
that Cap had.
Yeah, that was really great. And the thing was this, and this is where they got it right over Star Wars, is that they didn't compromise the film for the fan service. The fan service was something that they worked in, that was shaped by where they were going in the film. And that's something that I really, really liked about it. And, you know, you mentioned a couple great callbacks, and there's obviously the America's Ass moment, which,
Yep.
you know, it was such a great movie, and it really captured the spirit of the characters, and especially how the MCU has impacted the overall Marvel mythology, not just in cinema, and our perceptions of these characters. You know, I mean, Robert Downey Jr. turned Iron Man into a worldwide icon, and I mean, prior to the original Civil War book, I'd say he's a C-list character. After Civil War, I'd give him B-list at best, but that movie, I mean, the MCU starting with his original film
Yep.
turned him into what is essentially now Marvel's trilogy.
Yep. And also, like, he pretty much changed how writers write the character. Like
Yeah.
before, like he's now the snarky, and they even draw him more like Robert Downey Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Like for better or for worse, depending on how you like your Iron Man. Like I never read Iron Man before that. Like, and the only Iron Man story that I've read since is Extremis, and that came out like 2 years before the movie. So
Yeah, and it's really insane. I mean, a lot of us comic book fans talk about how we hear certain voices in our head when we're reading dialogue from characters, and you know, I mean, you and I are like the same age, and so we grew up with the Marvel movies, and I can, speaking for myself personally, when I read an Avengers book or a Marvel book, not a single one of those characters that I read is not the voice of an actor or actress from the MCU.
oh totally. Like I always read Cap in like Chris Evans' voice
Yeah.
because he's just so perfect in the role. And what's
Oh,
funny is that when you look at like Chris Evans before, like he was in like the Fantastic Four movies, the Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, and he was one of the bright spots in those movies, but you would never think that he would be Captain America.
yeah, and so successful at it too.
Yeah.
Because even then, you know, I mean, Captain America and Iron Man are particularly two interesting characters because neither one of them are well known for having an extended history of great stories. You know, when
Yeah.
you ask what Captain America run to read, you're going to get the same answer every time. When you
Brubaker.
ask, yeah,
Yeah.
when you ask what Iron Man one run to read, it's always Demon in a Bottle. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's crazy to see how much these movies have like how they've redefined the characters. I mean, prior to the MCU, Marvel's A-list were the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and
And
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
And out of those three, the only one that is still an A-list Marvel character is Spider-Man. I mean, let's be real, the larger consciousness doesn't really care about the Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of them are really burnt out on the X-Men.
Yeah, no matter how Fantastic Four fans want to spin it, and I'm a Fantastic Four fan, mainly from Hickman, but no matter how they want to spin it, they just don't sell. That's the thing about the Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of those moments where you realize that as much history that's behind them, and even though at one point they were on top of the rock, a lot can change, and especially in the public consciousness, you know, with all of the business dealings they had to make with the rights, and you know the denials that Marvel has made that they put the Fantastic Four on the back burner because of the film rights. It's pretty interesting to see what was in the MCU and what was not able to be in the MCU, and how that shaped the public consciousness of Marvel.
Yeah.
It's a wild ride, and just speaking on Endgame, man, to really pay off 20 films, almost 11 years of movies, is absolutely insane. Like
Yeah.
it is such a testament to the development of Marvel Studios. Obviously, Kevin Feige, what the Russo brothers had started developing from Winter Soldier on. It was
Don't forget Jon Favreau, who directed the first Iron Man.
true. Yeah, John Favreau also. I mean, you could make an argument that Iron Man could still be considered one of the greatest comic book adaptations simply because of what it did for the comic book movie landscape.
Oh yeah, it's still one of my favorite MCU movies, like definitely top 5. Like it's one of the most rewatchable movies of the entire series.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make the argument that it's one of the most rewatchable movies of the 21st century.
Yeah.
It's charming, it has action, it has heart, it has a lot of great moments with these characters, and it's a solid movie.
Not to
And
mention a great soundtrack too.
yeah,
AC/DC and Black Sabbath.
yeah.
Perfect fit for Iron Man.
Totally agree. They were great. I really love the fact that those movies were able to kind of bring those two bands back into the public consciousness, because for
Yep.
me, I'm blasting Thunderstruck when I'm at the gym, but
Yep.
to me it's just a me thing. And when Iron Man is flying into that big stadium in the second movie,
Just shoot
and
to thrill.
yeah,
Yeah.
shoot the thrill. And it's just like, oh man, like this, they're catering to me right now.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So yeah, Avengers Endgame would definitely have to be my first mention. Taylor, what would you bring up as your next contender?
I'm gonna keep it in Marvel. I'm gonna say Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no, I mean, I think it's one of those movies that I haven't found a single person that watched it that could even venture debating that. Even amongst the best Marvel films, you will still have the naysayers. But Spider-Verse is just so purely good
Yeah.
that I mean, maybe you have, because the internet is a pretty wide place, but I haven't found anybody contesting how great that film was.
Yep. Me neither. Probably like one or two people. They say, "Oh, it's good," but they still say that it's good. Like
Yeah.
there's no one saying that it's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And if that's the worst you're getting, you're in good shape.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think that made that movie so special was the visual style, and how clearly it was homaging different eras of comics and what they were doing visually. I mean, even when they were trying to blur out background images, they used I forget the practical term for it, but they use like the screen shading technique with like the dots in the
Yeah.
background to blur it out.
I forgot what it's called, but like I know what you're talking about, like the stuff from old comics where it's like dot stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's part of it is referred to now by screen shading, but there was a different name for it prior. But I mean, even down to those visual cues and the way that Miles develops his powers, and how it's this very clear mirror image of Peter.
Yeah.
It was a great movie from start to
Yeah.
finish. And the crazy thing about it for me was that I wasn't going into that movie excited at all. I didn't care. I really did not care going into that movie. And I walked out of it, and it was my favorite movie of 2018.
Oh, like yeah, same one of my favorite movies of 2018. And I want to shout out Corridor, the people at Corridor Digital that do like the VFX artists react and stuff.
Mhm.
They did a clip on Spider-Verse that like blew up over the internet back in like 2019, where they're going they were analyzing the scene where Peter and Miles are swinging after they get out of like the lab,
Mhm.
like when they're going up the trees and stuff. And they
Yep.
pointed out this great thing where um Miles, like animated movies usually are at 12 frames per second, and
Mhm.
like live action movies are at 24. And what they did is that they made Peter the more like trained Spider-Man at 24 frames per second, and they made Miles like the more, I guess you could say, noobish Spider-Man at 12 frames per second. And
Mhm.
once Miles gets up to like when he does his like leap of faith moment, he's up to 24 frames per second. So it really shows like the development of Miles through just like the frame rate.
Yeah, that's a really cool technical application that added to the story, because when you really think about it, there is certainly something different in the kinetics of the character
Yeah.
from that point on, the confidence that he has in himself.
And one thing that always gets me is that they use the Sienkiewicz Kingpin. He's just so massive. It's so hilarious.
Yeah, from Daredevil: Love and War.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really great, and it's I mean, from like just everything about that movie was great.
Yeah.
The
It's just
writing,
like the perfect voice cast, like Nicolas Cage as Spider-Man Noir and Liev Schreiber as Kingpin.
hmm
Like such a great voice cast.
yeah. I mean, I would venture to call it almost perfect movie. You know, it was great, and I don't say that a lot. And when I
Yep.
say it was my favorite movie of 2018, I don't mean just comic book movies. Point blank, to me, it was the best thing I had seen all year.
And I would say it's the best Spider-Man movie ever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't even think there's much of a debate to that. Um, it was phenomenal, man. From the visuals to the animatics that you bring up, to the way that they handle the characters and the development of those characters. I mean, geez, when spoilers for a movie that came out 2 years ago, when they kill Peter A. Parker, we're only with him for like 10 minutes, and you feel
Yeah.
it, and that takes some seriously good writing and development of a character in order to feel that attached to them and get that amount of reaction from their death from such an early point of the movie.
Yeah. And also all the stuff with Prowler and
Yeah.
like, oh, it's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it was, and the soundtrack for that movie was so good. I mean, yeah, it was excellent. It was really a comic book
Yeah.
on the silver
And
screen.
I can't talk about how hilarious that after credit scene was with Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah.
So good. One of the best after credit scenes in like any comic book movie.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was so aware. It
Yeah.
was so aware. I love it. Man, and it gets me excited too because I just saw something on social media today where they had brought up that the second movie is back in development as of I think today. So that's such good news.
Yeah. Can't wait.
Yeah, man. Yeah, an absolutely great pick. You can make an argument that it's a top 5 comic book movie of all time. It was so stellar, and one great thing to close that out is that it introduced pop culture to Miles in a way that he had never gotten before. You know, he had never had that platform, and it's really great that kids are going to grow up where with Miles being their Spider-Man. You know, I
Yeah.
think that's pretty tremendous.
And
Uh,
and it's great to have like that as one of the last Stan Lee cameos because his cameo was so good
Yeah.
in that
Oh,
movie.
I teared up, dude. I
Yeah.
no lie, I teared up during that cameo because it was so fresh after he passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome mention there. I think one to bring up, and I know you're gonna be really into this one is Wonder Woman. I mean,
Oh yes, totally agree.
it's huge. It was the first female-led superhero movie in a climate where you know these comic book films are the biggest box office titans of all time, and it was DC's first really critically successful movie. I mean, it breaks my heart that Captain Marvel made more money than this because to me Wonder Woman was infinitely better.
Yeah. It's to me it just shows how much passion Patty Jenkins had for the character. You could tell that she loved this character and she wanted to do it right. She got like it was such a breath of fresh air for it to be in World War One because I know World War Two was kind of overplayed because it's and World War Two is so easy because of course like you have defined sides, you have the Nazis and then you have us or
Mhm.
the other allies. World War One is much more like shades of gray.
Mm. Yeah, the landscape was certainly more original, and the thing I like about that movie is it has no lack of charm. You know,
Yeah,
aside from all of the really heartfelt lessons and all of the development that Diana makes as a character, I love how her growth really permeates her supporting cast. You know, Steve Trevor really grows as a character by the end of that movie, clearly
yeah,
based on his relationship with Diana, and obviously her impact on I don't remember the name of the group, but Steve Trevor's like squad of
yeah.
soldiers.
They didn't really have a name. They were just
Mm,
like a lot of people just call them the Howling Commandos because that's basically what they are. But
mm,
like it's like I really like that, especially like the I think it was the sniper, Charlie,
Mm-hmm.
who I think was from Train Spotting. But yeah, he was really good. And to me, what I liked is that what they did is that they took the first arc of Perez, which is like a really solid foundation,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where like Perez's run is the run after Crisis, where he like redid everything and Ares was the main villain.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of did the same thing where I know some people say like it fell apart in the third act. And to me, when I look at the third act, I'm like, that's just what happened in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Because like if you read Gods and Mortals, Ares just appears at the beginning of the last issue of that arc. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just reminded me so much of that arc to me. Like I
Yeah.
didn't have a problem with the third act. Of course, like you can criticize CGI and all that stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
like every comic book movie ends with a big CGI fight. So it just follows the cliche, I guess.
Yeah,
But
I mean, in terms of the storytelling, I never had a problem with that movie. You know, certainly there are jabs to be taken at the final fight scene CGI, but you know,
yeah,
I thought that generally the storytelling of that movie really resonated. And um, what one thing that I think was really great about that movie is that it sold me on Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, because
yeah,
prior to that I wasn't quite sold. You know, I wasn't like objective to her taking on the role, but I had a lot of questions. I was like, how am I going to believe that this tiny little Israeli woman is going to be able to do what Wonder Woman does? You know what I mean? Because she's
yeah,
beautiful woman, but
yeah,
not really huge. And you know, am I going to take that seriously? And man, she really brought it in that movie. I mean,
yep,
I'm not going to say it was the most phenomenal performance that I had seen all year, but Gal Gadot and her performance as Wonder Woman was very heartfelt, very honest, and very charming. And I give her a
yep,
lot of credit, aside from the fact that the reshoots were all done while she was pregnant, and she still kicked ass.
yeah. And it was like in freezing weather in London.
Mm-hmm.
So like you have to commend her for that.
Yeah.
And I think it really helped because Alan Heinberg, who wrote the script for Wonder Woman, who got full credit because like Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns did like touch ups for the scripts, but since they didn't do that much like writing, they didn't get full credit. Alan Heinberg got full credit, and he did write an arc on Wonder Woman like post Infinite Crisis, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of that arc, like
Mhm.
I think he did like really well with the script, and I also think I also think he's gay. So I mean that doesn't like doesn't matter to me. I think it's great that like a gay screenwriter wrote like one of the biggest female empowerment like symbols ever.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And they did it really well. You know, and we were talking about it briefly off screen, about how the CW shows really hammers in the politics of what they're trying to do. But there's something really great about Wonder Woman where you could tell that whatever politics are being conveyed through the film are a product of telling this character's story and not
Yeah.
vice versa. And that's what makes them work so well. And it is why, you know, I mean, you know me, I have this weird thing where I like to say I can usually differentiate between what my favorite movie is or my favorite thing is versus what is objectively strong.
Oh,
And,
same. I do the same thing.
and I might personally enjoy Shazam a little bit more. There's no doubt in my mind that Wonder Woman is by far the best DCEU movie to come out as of right now.
Yeah, it's still my favorite. It's
Yeah,
still it's still my top movie of the
and
DCU.
and the thing is when I say Shazam is my favorite of them, it's not by a long stretch. And
Yeah,
like I said, I there's no denying Wonder Woman is just a better movie.
yeah. And also like not to mention like the iconic No Man's Land scene, which
Oh
defined the
God,
movie.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it, and it's so funny about how, not to rank on Captain Marvel too much, but on how Captain Marvel tried to convey very similar symbolism, and it was just her standing up. And it's like,
Yeah.
boy, you have a space god just struggling to stand up, and then it's Diana Prince with nothing but herself walking through a field of bullets. Like, you want to talk about execution? That was some rarefied execution
Yep.
in that scene.
And also, like, their use of color I thought was genius, because what they did is that they made Themyscira this shining, like it was so full of color. Like, you had the blue sea, you had all the green on the island, and then once you move to London, it's
The
all
grays.
grimy and dark and gray. It's a
Mhm.
great dichotomy with that.
And speaking to the attention to detail that I really appreciated is that they made the women of Themyscira take on a similar accent to Gal Gadot because
Yeah.
her accent was too heavy for her to drop. And to me, I felt like it really built a sense of culture and a sense of history. And the exact location of Themyscira isn't isn't like
Yeah.
well known. There's a lot of speculation, and I'm sure
Yes.
that different writers have put it in different
Yeah.
spots.
I think it's most known for being in the middle of the Black Sea. I think that's what I think Rucka kind of changed it because he said, "Oh, there's an island in the Black Sea," but that's really like a proxy for Themyscira, and
Mm,
Themyscira is like in a pocket dimension.
mm.
So he changed that, but I think it's most known to being in the Black Sea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even then though, it's the where I was kind of going with that is it really helped to push the idea that these women, have existed throughout time and kind of come from some of the earliest walks of life, and they have because the Israeli accent has a lot of history behind it. So
Yeah.
it really, to me, solidified a pre-existing, well-built world, and that's one of the things that I admired about it. Yeah, man, Wonder Woman, it didn't break any crazy box office records, but to me, I think successfully integrating the greatest female superhero of all time and one of the
Yeah.
greatest icons of one of the greatest feminine icons in general was pretty fantastic, and it
And
was a strong movie.
and to think about, like, if all this crazy stuff in the world didn't happen, Wonder Woman 84 would be in the theaters right now, and we would be
Mm.
talking about it.
Oh,
So
I'm pumped. I'm so
me
pumped. But
too.
I'm curious, man. What would be your next pick?
Actually, I think I went last, so I think it's your pick now because I picked Spider-Verse last.
I said Wonder Woman. Remember?
Oh, but I thought that was from the chat, so I thought you wanted to do your own pick.
Oh no, that was my pick.
Okay. This is going to be a surprising one because it bombed at the box office, but I'm going to say Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Interesting. What makes you say that?
Well, it's hard for me to judge it as an adaptation since I haven't read the book, but to me, it just felt so like it came out in 2010, like right when right after, right in between the first wave, and it just felt so fresh. Edgar Wright, he has so much energy in his movies,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like a great mix between a comic book movie and a video game movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there was Michael Cera is not one of my favorite actors, but I think he played the role of Scott Pilgrim really well. Because, to be honest, when it comes to Scott Pilgrim is the definition of a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say he's one of us because that's kind of generalizing, but he's this weebish kind of guy that gets this pretty girl, and it's such a fun movie, and I don't know if it broke Mary Elizabeth Winstead, but it definitely she's really pretty in that movie. But I think it's a great comic book movie, and a lot of people don't even know that it's a comic book movie.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about it is that there was certainly a general reaction of curiosity and when that movie came out, because when somebody makes a public statement that it's an Oni Press, an independent comic book movie,
Yeah.
everybody's like, "What? This is a comic book movie?" And I can't help but think that it, in a very small way, brought the concept of independent comics into the public consciousness.
Oh, totally. And before that, they had another Oni Press comic that got adapted horribly was Whiteout. Greg Rucka's Whiteout. It came out in 2008, I think, and it was with Kate Beckinsale, and they totally butchered the book. So it was even Rucka denounces it. It was so bad, so poorly adapted. But yeah, but it was just so well done. There was so much energy. Like it was really funny. There was so much charm to it.
Yeah, I
And
totally
not to
agree.
mention also Chris Evans was in it. He was one of the evil he was one of the evil boyfriends or
Yeah,
girlfriends.
yeah, it had a great cast. It had a really, really youthful energy to it, man. It was certainly not something I would have thought of, but an interesting pick nonetheless.
Yeah.
I think for me, my next pick that I have to bring up is probably the best thing that I had seen on television last year, and that's the Watchmen HBO series. You know, if you asked me, I really had no faith going into it, but walking out of it, you know,
Yeah, it was
that show,
fantastic.
that show was better than it had any right being. And the thing I love about Damon Lindelof's awareness when making that show was that you can't redo Watchmen. When
Yeah.
Alan Moore said that Watchmen was unadaptable, he was right. He was right. You cannot make a truly faithful Watchmen adaptation and make it work in film. You know what you can do? Give your impression on what the world looks like after and what the world might have looked like a little bit before then. And it really tackled a lot of really topical issues, I think, in a really smart way that didn't come off as pointing fingers, but just
Yeah.
kind of stated facts as facts. And I don't, man, the cast of characters was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Regina King, you know, that movie, that show made me such a fan of Regina King, and God, did I love that show.
Yeah, same. Like I think my only like nitpick of the show is I think sometimes it kind of spun its wheels with its mysteries. Like I think like in episodes like 3 and 4, I think that they the wheel spun a bit, but other than that, like making the Rorschach mask like a symbol of a white supremacist group was like such a great um like adaptation or like continuation because
Yeah,
Rorschach like he was very right wing in the comics and people like to ignore that because the New Frontiersman was a conservative paper.
hmm.
But I thought they did that really well. And as you said, Regina King, Looking Glass was a fantastic character. I
Yeah,
loved Looking Glass.
yeah. I mean, the world was just so fleshed out, and they did such a great job on building on the foundation that Alan Moore set up in the original book, and sort of extrapolating what they felt like would have happened from there. There were a couple things that I mean, I won't even argue that I enjoyed watching that I didn't necessarily think would have been the tried and true kind of continuation of a certain character's pathway or their trajectory. But because I was able to kind of remove myself from that and think, well, it's a film adaptation, you know, I can enjoy it for what it was. And it was a really interesting meditation on how the events of Watchmen shaped those characters moving forward,
Yeah.
even if I didn't 100% think that that was the kind of perfect trajectory for them after the original comic book series.
Yeah, like and how they handled Ozymandias was fantastic. Jeremy
Jeremy
Irons,
Irons.
so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was so. It was that show was so many things. It was honest. It was smart. It was eclectic. Um, it was and just what they do with the concept of hooded justice and
Oh,
how they
it
kind of
was,
ultimately go full circle back to why that character was important and what type of impact it had on that world, and the kind of subtle, the actually they weren't even that subtle, just the very very intelligent use of real world political factions and organizations, and how those things can be kind of accentuated through the tools that you have given to you in Watchmen. It was just
yeah.
really, really
And
well done.
yep. And also like the ending was like you can't end Watchmen on like the ambiguous ending was so well done to me. Like just leaving that, and to me, I respect Lindelof for not doing a season two. You don't need a season two.
I agree.
And like if they do a season two without Lindelof, like I'm not watching.
I 100% agree. I mean, even if Lindelof, well, Lindelof has certainly earned my trust after the first season. So I think that if he were attached, I would give season two a shot. I'd still be a little bit
Yeah,
skeptical, but I think knowing that he had told the story that he wanted to tell without overstretching himself is really important. And it's an issue that you see a lot in any type of storytelling where I think a creative feels the need, whether it's societal pressure or money or what have you, to continue doing something far beyond what they were ready to do. And I really respect Lindelof as a creative to know when he told the story that was important to him, and to know that he told the story that he knew that he could execute without going any further and ruining that.
yeah,
It happens a lot, but yeah, Watchmen, man. I mean, I think it was one of the best. Actually, it might have been my favorite TV thing that I saw all last year.
yeah. I don't watch much TV, so it was one of the only things I watched.
Well, that's got to say something. You
Yeah,
finished it.
and I
Um,
watched it with my dad, who's not a comic book guy, and he
mm,
was kind of confused for most of the show because he wasn't familiar. Like he watched the Zack Snyder movie, but you could only go so far with watching that movie.
there were
But
no scripts involved in the making of that movie.
yeah. And I think didn't Dave Gibbons give his blessing to the show?
Yeah,
I
but
thought he
Dave Gibbons
did.
also gave his blessing to the movie. so
True. I
I
mean, I mean, putting your name on it is different than giving your blessing. I think he actually respected the show. I don't, because Alan Moore, like he doesn't love greed. He's not. He hates money. Like I don't want to say that, but he's
it's money.
very. Um, he, let's just say he's very opinionated on like corporate greed. Let's just say that. But because all like when when I think it started with V for Vendetta, when V for Vendetta got adapted in 2005, he just said, "Oh, just give all the credit to David Lloyd. I don't want my name on this."
Mhm.
Because before V for Vendetta, that horrible LXG film came out, the Leave for Extraordinary Gentlemen,
Yeah.
that just totally cut off. Like after that, Moore just hated everything. Well, Moore hated everything before that, but
Yeah. And
that
for a crazy, secluded black wizard somewhere in the mountains of wherever, I still love him.
same.
Taylor, what's another good one that you'd like to bring up as a potential great within the space of comic book adaptations?
Um, I'm gonna say like when it comes to the Nolan films, my personal favorite is Batman Begins. I
Mm,
feel that's a. I know people love Dark Knight, and as you said before, I'll objectively say that Dark Knight is the better like made movie. Like
hmm
it's better as a movie, but to me, for an enjoyment factor, I prefer Begins because I
hmm
thought it was a bit tighter in how it was paced and stuff. But it was just such a great movie. Like Christian Bale, of course. Like to me, Christian Bale, like you can make fun of his Batman voice all you want. It's kind of a meme. It's really a meme at this point. But to me, his Bruce Wayne is just peak Bruce Wayne. He's the best Bruce Wayne on screen we've seen. To me,
Yeah, Yeah, those movies were incredible, and the way that Nolan very deliberately aimed to tell his own story in a world that he developed with more of a realistic kind of taste to it, but also was not shy about the comics that he was homaging. We talked off screen
Yeah.
about the homages to Long Halloween and even to Year One and The Man Who Laughs. I mean, the end of Batman Begins was literally the end of the Batman Year One. You
Yep.
know, and let's not forget to mention that Gary Oldman is the perfect Jim
Yes.
Gordon.
Totally.
From his physical looks to the way that he portrayed the character. If you told me that Gary Oldman was going to continuously play Jim Gordon in every next adaptation of Batman we got, I would say let's do it. Like, I'm in.
Yep. And like, I think the only like knock, like, I mean, I think the only knock that I have on Begins is Katie Holmes,
Yeah.
because she's not the best. Like, Rachel in the movies anyway. Like, even when Maggie Gyllenhaal came in The Dark Knight, like, she was fine. Like, but she's pretty much just a plot device.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel
Oh
is.
yeah. Oh
But
yeah. Absolutely.
but even like, even though I have problems with like, I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save you. Like, I feel that's kind of a stretch for Batman, but because to me that feels more like Azrael Batman, like
I
early Azrael Batman.
I
But
used
like,
to feel the same way, but I honestly, about a week or two ago, I had a good rewatch of all three of those movies, and the thing that made me like that moment was that that's still the first film in a trilogy, and he still had a lot of growing to do.
yeah,
You know, he wasn't as weathered and as battle hardened as he'd been. You know, as much as I don't love The Dark Knight Rises, he wasn't as battle hardened by then. And to me, I think that moment was a little bit of an earlier, not 100% cemented and confident Batman making a compromise on his code. Whereas you get to that point in the second film where he tries to save everybody, like no caps. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So to me, I just thought that and I thought I used to think the same way. I used to be like, but he technically killed him.
yeah,
But as I rewatched it, man, I think to myself, you know, it really just gave that Bruce kind of another stepping stool for him to grow.
yeah. And to me, like, I liked Liam Neeson's Ray Struggle. I thought he was good, but to me, Cillian Murphy,
Mm.
just, oh, he was so good as Scarecrow. I loved him as Scarecrow.
Yeah, it was that those films were generally really, really well cast.
Yeah,
But Batman Begins, I mean, you can't bring up Batman Begins without talking about The Dark Knight as well. You know, a
yeah,
lot of people say it's the greatest comic book film of all time, and uh, I I think I can still agree to that after having a strong. I mean, that movie is just so viscerally well told,
yeah,
and the way that Christopher Nolan decides to handle all of the main characters, obviously aside from Rachel, because fuck Rachel.
yeah,
But aside from that, all of the main pieces are really moved in the proper directions, and the way that the themes of that movie are just tied up and
yeah,
resonating come its conclusion were just fantastic. I mean, I've seen that movie probably 5 or 6 times now, and on my last rewatch, I still had, you know, the chills
yeah,
when Gordon has that final face-to-face conversation with Bruce after the scene with Two-Face. And
yeah.
I'm like, boy, like this has been turned into a corny metaphor that everybody gets like tattooed or whatever, but it doesn't stop me from loving it.
Yeah, like to me, like, I like The Dark Knight. I think it's a really good movie. Um, to me, I'm a big Two-Face fan.
Yeah, me too.
I thought I have some problems with how Two-Face was handled at the end, because I thought they kind of rushed it at the end, because they
Mm,
didn't really give Aaron Eckhart that much to do as Two-Face.
mm,
But to me, because one of my problems, especially with Dark Knight Rises, is that they basically made his death a plot device, and that didn't really fit well for me.
mm.
But I thought as Harvey Dent, he was amazing.
Yeah.
He really captured that Long Halloween Harvey Dent, especially when they recreated the scene from Long Halloween with Harvey, Bruce, and Gordon on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can't mention Dark Knight without mentioning Heath Ledger's performance as
Phenomenal,
the
man.
Joker. Yeah.
Yeah. He
Still,
really.
even if you say like Joaquin Phoenix's um, performance, but that's totally different. But you can say that competes. But to me, like, and to many people, like Heath Ledger's performance is still the benchmark for Joker.
I don't disagree with you, and I don't. Even though they were very different, I don't necessarily know if Joaquin Phoenix's Joker exists in the same way that it did
Yeah, I
if Heath
agree.
Ledger hadn't done it the way that he did.
Same. Heath Ledger, I think, for good or for ill, I think Heath Ledger's just method acting changed the way that people like actors look at the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at it, Heath Ledger did it, then Jared Leto did it, and he was I can't stand Jared Leto with all the like set stories and stuff.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix did it, and like to me that kind of bothers me because to me like I get why people want to like stay in the head of the character, but to me method acting in like this current climate, since everybody wants to method act, it kind of is kind of overdone
Mm.
because like I think the king of method acting still is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest actor of all time, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a technique that I don't think works for everybody, but when it's
Yeah.
done well, it really changes the playing field of the performance and of the film. And for a supporting character, the amount of impact that Heath Ledger's Joker had on that movie was tremendous, to the
Yeah.
point that, we're 10 years past that movie, and every other time you see somebody remotely talk about the Joker, the same question comes about: the why so serious?
Yeah.
It was iconic. It really, I don't think that those movies would have been anywhere near as iconic and well received as they were without Heath Ledger. And not to say they wouldn't have been great films, because Chris Nolan's a phenomenal director,
Yeah.
but he really added a dynamic to that trilogy of films that changed the ball game, I think.
Oh, totally. And like, if you look at Batman movies now, like they're so like you can't escape Christopher Nolan. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just can't. Like, even with the Zack Snyder movies, Chris Nolan, like he produced Man of Steel to its benefit or to its detriment.
Mm.
But and even if you look at the upcoming Matt Reeves movie, which I'm super excited for.
I have never been more excited for a Batman movie in my life.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, because I can honestly say that I think I would still prefer a Ben Affleck directed Batman movie, even if he wasn't starring in it. I have garnered a huge love for Affleck as a director,
Yeah.
but Matt Reeves is a damn good replacement, and he's already proven the initiative that he's taking with this character and what he's trying to do with this film. I mean, when you look at that cast, there aren't a lot of really huge superstar names,
Yeah,
but when you look at
they're mostly indie people because if you look at it, like Paul Dano was from There Will Be Blood, and
Mhm.
like Jeffrey Wright, of course, like he's known, I guess, as Felix Leiter from the recent James Bond movies. But
Mhm.
like all the rest of these, like Zoe Kravitz, like her most recent stuff is the Fantastic Beasts movies.
And High
So
Fidelity.
and High Fidelity, yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is even though they're not superstars, they're all proven actors. I mean, they're all
yeah,
very talented. I mean, Zoe Kravitz out of all of them has the shortest resume, but I don't remember the name of the show, but she's on a show with Meryl Streep. And when you watch a movie with a superstar talent and somebody as magnetic as Meryl Streep, and if you can hold your own on camera with somebody as talented as Meryl Streep, that's a pretty big kind of bullet point to add to the resume there. And I think it says a lot about what Zoe Kravitz is going to be able to bring to this movie.
Oh, totally. And I think Robert Pattinson is a great pick.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I know people are kind of iffy on the suit. Like, to me, I need like a full, like, I don't want a screen test. I just want a full like production still to get like a full thing of the suit. And
Agreed.
like and I think the Batmobile, I love that the Batmobile is a car.
Mm.
It's so stylish too.
Yeah, I mean the thing about the costume design is there is a point that the movie hasn't been edited. It hasn't been thrown through filters. We don't see
I hate set photos. I hate set photos because they do everything with no justice at all.
Yeah. I mean, because the designs for the costumes and sometimes for the props are pretty out there generally. You know what I mean? They're certainly not standardized to what we see every day. So if you're not seeing them the way that the director and the cinematographer intend you to see them, they're not always going to hit the same way. And the one thing that I always bring up is this is the first movie in a supposed trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Things are going to change, and things are allowed to change. I mean, in the aforementioned Nolan trilogy, Batman's suit changed 3 times.
Yep.
You know, so who's to say Pattinson's isn't going to change? But in terms of the quality and who is involved, I mean, Robert Pattinson is an incredibly talented actor.
Yep.
Like I can genuinely say this is one of the best young actors working in the business today.
I haven't seen The Lighthouse, but I've heard.
Oh my God, it's so good.
I've heard great things about The Lighthouse.
It's so good. It was my favorite movie of 2019, and I don't even like horror movies, dude. I don't care about horror movies. But you watch that movie, and it is a combination of intrigue, thriller, mindfuckery, and the ridiculous performances from Pattinson and Dafoe. It is literally 2 men on a set together going crazy, and it's incredible. Like, if you told me that Dafoe was going to be his Joker, I would 100% be.
Yeah, that's a big fan cast.
I hope,
for
man.
Joker.
I'm not usually big into fan casts.
Yeah, me neither.
But especially after their dynamic in The Lighthouse, I would give my left leg to see Dafoe as Pattinson's Joker. And because they already have a proven chemistry in The Lighthouse. I mean, they literally did a whole movie with just them all the time, and it worked. You know, since you haven't seen it, Taylor, and for anybody who might be watching, if you haven't seen it, 1000% recommend it.
Okay.
Like, great movie. And if you want something to reassure you of how good of an actor Robert Pattinson is, that's the movie to do it.
So what's your next pick?
Okay, I feel like people who watch my shit knew this was coming. The Daredevil Netflix show.
Yeah.
It was really good. And
so
the
good.
Way it treads its own path in some very specific ways. I think specifically in the way they like to portray Matt Murdock's relationship with his religion, I think was really brought into a whole different light in that show that we hadn't quite seen in the comics. And I actually really, really liked it. And the portrayal and the way the character, the portrayal on behalf of Charlie Cox and how he was written have without a doubt impacted my perception of the character and how I imagine that character. It peppered in some of the greatest Daredevil and Marvel stories of all time throughout the 3 seasons. It had elements of crime noir thriller. Season 2 was just comic book. It was, and somehow that show was able to pull off both of those dynamics really, really well. And as heartbroken as I was to hear that we're not going to be getting any more, there's a part of me that is okay with it because of how incredible the ending was. And I know you haven't seen it, Taylor.
Yeah.
I 1000% recommend you just do a rewatch of the show and get into season 3 and just sit back and enjoy that masterful season television.
Yeah. And I gotta say, like, how they balance, like, of course, all the superhero stuff and like the the court stuff. I thought they did the court stuff really well. They focused on the lawyer parts of Mad and Foggy, and Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, one of the best villains Marvel has ever done.
I mean, you could make an argument that he's one of the best comic book adaptation villains that we've seen so far. I mean, he was incredible.
Yeah, it was just so visceral and like it's so hard to say, but like his performance is just so good, and like you can definitely see like when he's mad, he's like furious, and when he's he even when he's calm, he's like not calm, if you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
he's just so intense.
The character is filled with unrest, and Vincent D'Onofrio's performance really carried that. There was a complexity to what those actors were able to bring to those characters. And one thing that one in particular that I don't think many people talk about is Eldon Henson's portrayal of Foggy Nelson, because he brought something in that character that has never been present in the comic books. I don't care what anybody says, in what is arguably the greatest Daredevil run of all time through Frank Miller, Foggy Nelson was a throwaway, hokey character, and writers moving forward, pursued a little bit more depth of the character, but there was nothing like the way Eldon Henson portrayed him in that show.
And
there was just such a depth and a very organic growth to where he started off at the beginning of the series and to where he ended. And I mean, from the writing to the way that Eldon played the character was just absolutely incredible, and I don't think it gets enough credit.
You could also say the same about Deborah Ann Wool's Karen Page.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, just that show was so well cast.
Yeah, and not to mention probably the most iconic action scene in like probably all of comic book television, the Oneer in season 1, the hallway fight.
And I love that it set a precedent to do one take, one shot fight scene every season.
Yeah. Well, even though like the one in season 2 with the stairway, they did do some hidden cuts.
Oh, did they?
Like, yeah.
There's a 1917 moment.
Yeah, they did some hidden cuts because as I mentioned Corridor before, they did another one where they had like the actual stunt man who did those scenes. Mm-hmm. He broke down like the Oneer from season 1 and also that scene, the stairway fight from season 2, and he said, yeah, we had a couple of hidden cuts, but like, so that one is not a true Oneer, but the one in season 1 was a true Oneer. And
they played it off really well.
Yeah.
I mean, season 3, I believe, was a Oneer as well. I mean, I know you haven't seen it yet, but once you watch it, I'd be interested to see what you pick up from that, because I don't, because I know in the stairwell scene there were definite moments where the lighting could really play into giving kind of a soft cut that we couldn't really pay attention to, but I don't think there was quite a moment quite like that in the 3rd season's quote unquote Oneer that would have given headway to that.
Yeah, and also like you can't ignore like John Bernthal's Punisher from season 2.
Yeah,
he was so popular, he spun off into his own show, and like he had one of the best action scenes in season 2. It was the prison fight.
Yeah,
with him and Daredevil, and also like just that speech with him and Matt on the roof.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah.
That show. It is. I mean, to me, it's a top 10 television show of all time. Yeah, the only reason that I think it's not closer to my top 3 is simply because it only had 3 seasons. If it had even a 4th season, just as good as what we had gotten, I think it definitely would have cemented itself in that position. And if you're a comic book fan of the character, it pays such respect to what has come before, and in my opinion, really evolves on that character and the mythos.
Yeah, and it's definitely head and shoulders above all the other Netflix shows.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. It was a phenomenal show. So yeah, 100%, man. The entire series of the Daredevil Netflix show, I think, is just such a testament. And I, it did kind of bring with it a level of phenomena because it was one of the first really big Netflix exclusive shows. You know what I mean? There was like that House of Cards, like that was big back then. But I remember when Daredevil Netflix hit, and there were some really hard non-comic book people that loved that show.
Yeah. What's kind of interesting about like when I first watched Daredevil, like the first episode of Daredevil, it was it 2014 or 2015? I forgot which year.
2015.
2015. Um, I was at school. I was in high school. It was my senior year of high school,
Same.
and I watched the first episode because I think I used to have a class at a college, like a intermediate culinary class at a college. So, but on that day we had like a day off from that,
Mhm.
and so I was just stuck in the cafeteria. I'm like, oh, like I can have Netflix on this crappy Mac laptop that I got from the school that and I'm like, oh, let me check out Daredevil. I watched the first episode. I'm like, I don't really like this. Like, it didn't really connect with me. But once I didn't actually finish the first season until like right before season two
Mm.
because I just procrastinated so much. But like once I'm like, oh, this is so good. And then season two was like better than season one. And to me, I loved the use of the black man without fear suit in the first season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was just so well done, and you could tell that there was such a high level of meditation on the execution of that show, man. I mean, it's incredible. It's one of my favorite comic book adaptations of all time, and truly, I think that show helped define a Daredevil fandom that never existed before that
Yep.
show, kind of touched base. And man, yeah, 100%. Daredevil Netflix. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Taylor, what would you give as another great?
Um, we were mentioning it before we went live, but Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I know you just had a rewatch before we started.
Yes, 100%, man. I hadn't seen that movie in years, and with all these crazy big scale Marvel movies that pretty much everyone and their mom has seen, um, I was constantly saying, Winter Soldier's still the best Marvel movie. There's no argument here. Um, and a couple of years had passed, and I was like, I know I remember, just the visceral reaction from watching that movie. Let me watch it again. And boy, am I glad that I never conceded my argument, because that movie is
Yeah,
still so well done, and its effectiveness in still maintaining the atmosphere of the MCU while also diverging in a way that none of the movies had done since, and that none of the movies had done moving forward, in that it was a genre film that took place in the MCU. It was a criminal political thriller movie
yep.
uh, within the MCU, and it worked.
It works
And
so well.
the way that it challenges the character Captain America and his perception of the world that he came back to, and even the world that he had left behind, was absolutely phenomenal. And for that to be like the first major directorial work of the Russo brothers in terms of cinema, it's
Yeah,
it's incredible.
yeah. Like, and of course, you can't pick any better Captain America source than Brubaker.
Yeah,
And this just it was such a great adaptation. Of course, as we said, you have to take artistic liberty when adapting a comic because you can't adapt a comic word for word, panel for panel, as
right.
much as Zack Snyder wants you to believe you can.
Yeah,
You can't. But they just did it so well, and like there are scenes where they're straight from the comics, And to me, still the best action scene in the MCU is the highway chase.
Yeah. Yeah, it's phenomenal, man. I mean, every action scene in that
Yeah,
movie was great.
like it was so good. They did it again in Civil War, just with Black Panther.
True. Very true. Yeah, literally from start to finish, Captain America jumps out a window and it gets sailing from there. Yeah, it was a great movie on every
Yeah,
single level. It, man, I'm still kind of reeling after that rewatch because I literally had just finished it before we hopped on here, and it just reminded me how much I love that movie, and where people could make very viable statements that they might like other movies more than this. It was it is easily the tightest, most well done Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, and I am willing to die on that hill.
yeah. I would agree, and I would say it's still the best use of Black Widow. Like how they
Agreed.
use Black Widow in that movie. It's Scarlett Johansson's best work as Black Widow.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and I think the even down to the way that Black Widow was written in that film, the amount of development that she receives being a supporting character in that movie is pretty insane.
Yeah,
She makes some pretty major choices that redefine who Natasha Romanoff is moving forward in the MCU.
yeah,
And that's what I like about that movie is that pretty much everything that happened impacted the larger MCU on a macro scale, but on a micro scale, really stayed with the characters that were involved in the narrative.
yep, totally.
But yeah, Winter Soldier is definitely a great mention. I think maybe we each do one more and then we can pretty much wrap it up. But
Yep.
what would I want to be my last one? So many great contenders, I mean, we've had I mean, from Batman 1989 on, the amount of comic book movies kind of slowly increased, and then obviously the MCU fever happened, and that became exponential. But
Batman
what would
89 Batman 89 is my personal favorite comic book movie, but I know it's not the best adaptation of Batman. So that's
that
why I'm not.
well, I think I mean, the fact that it redefined the public image of Batman, I think makes it a perfect contender for this list. I actually just
Yeah.
rewatched that past weekend, and it's not a perfect movie
Yeah.
at all. It's not even close. But there's something about. I mean, first of all, Anton Furst's set design is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But and down to the Danny Elfman score, but that movie really reshaped the public image of Batman.
Yeah.
Even though it had started happening in the comic books a few years prior. I mean, for Michael Keaton, what people don't really understand is that the only real performance of Batman that he had to go off of was Adam West.
Yep.
Even as great as even as phenomenal as Christopher, I almost said Christopher Nolan, as Christian Bale and his performance was, he had elements of prior Batman to kind of help shape his portrayal of the character and his interpretation. Michael Keaton practically did it from scratch, and that's pretty incredible to
Yep.
single-handedly reshape the public identity of such an iconic character.
Yeah, and also like as much as people rag on Jack Nicholson for just pretty much playing Jack Nicholson,
Yeah.
I love his Joker so much. He has so much energy, and he has so many good moments and jokes. To me, like my favorite scene in the movie is when he takes over the news station and he has that commercial for the Smilex
Yes.
gas.
Yes.
It's so hilarious.
Yes. Yeah. And then he has like that really corny nod to the old commercials with like the bikini babes on the beach.
Yep.
That it was, and the Prince soundtrack was
Yep.
so good.
Even
And
though
the
it
way
dates it, even though it dates the movie so badly,
yeah, it
but
does.
it's
Like that's part of the charm. You know
yeah,
what
it's
I
part
mean?
of the like yeah, the dateness, like how much it's dated, like it's part of
Yeah,
the charm.
you don't watch a Humphrey Bogart movie without wanting the charm
Yeah.
of a movie of its time. So it's definitely part of it. And yeah, I mean I wouldn't even shy away from saying that even though it's not the best made movie, the argument that it is one of the greatest comic book adaptations of all time certainly stands, in my
Yeah.
opinion, just because of what it did and how it revolutionized how we look at the character. I mean, you look at the upcoming 3 Jokers, and Jason Fabok draws a lot of influence from the designs found within that film.
Yep.
So we do have somebody in the chat. It's a little bit off topic, but we'll answer it anyways. JT Gamer wants to know what we think of the Marvel Epic collections and where should he start. DC Golden, Silver Age, Bronze Age, what? Marvel Epic collections are great. They're really nice ways to get a flavor for who a character or who a cast of characters were for a very set period of time. It well encapsulates the eras in which they come from, and they're they're great ways for you to get your hands on stories that aren't regularly republished in singular graphic novels. I know, Taylor, you read a lot from Marvel Unlimited, but do you have much experience with the Marvel Epic collections?
No, but I know Nearman Condition loves the Epic collections. And I think they're a great way to collect older stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are a lot of runs that they don't reprint in like the standard size volumes that you can find in Epic collections, and there's nothing better than finding something you really enjoy and just having a really thick book to get into.
Yeah, but I think one of the drawbacks of the Epic collections is since they're published out of order, that can be annoying. Because like they can start with start with like a volume 5, and you don't get like a volume 1 until like 3 or 4 volumes down the line. That can be a bit annoying. But like when it comes like the older stuff, because like the Epic collections usually collect like Silver Age and Bronze Age stuff, and like with those you can be a bit more lenient in terms of like publication, because most stories back then, they didn't have long arcs. It was just like one and done stories.
They're even though you have a very big chunk of book to read, pretty much all the stories are typically fairly digestible. Regarding DC, where to start, it depends on your tastes, man. I am a modern reader. I don't like reading super old comic book stories because I think that the dating is a detriment to the quality of the story, just because comics have really, to me, and I make this statement a lot, and I know it comes off a little bit pretentious, but the perception of what comics were back then, even by the people creating them, versus what comics are now, are very different. And moving from the mid 80s forward, the understanding of what could be done in a comic book and what people ended up doing from that point moving forward really evolved. And so I personally, when somebody asks me where to start, my answer is usually somewhere in the mid 80s moving forward.
Yeah.
But if you have a taste for the kind of zany, campy, products of their time, you have to pick whatever age of comics best suits your taste. That's the only recommendation I could make in that regard.
I totally agree. I'm more like you. I'm more of a modern reader, so I would say start after Crisis on Infinite Earths, because that's when like it changed. And even then, some of those stories are still kind of dated because of how they're written and how overwrought they are. And that's one of the problems that I have with earlier stuff, is that I know a lot of people, when it comes to like Silver Age and Bronze Age stuff and Golden Age stuff, is that they can't get past the art, how like it looks like. To me, I've gained more of appreciation for Silver Age and Bronze Age art over the time. But to me, it's just the writing. It's just so stiff and overwrought.
I'm
most of the time.
Yeah, 100% with you there, man.
Yeah. So I would say post-Crisis, or if you want something more modern, just start like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I love the visual aesthetic of old comic book art. I think it's really charming, and it obviously reminds you of what comics were and gives you an appreciation for their roots, but the writing is generally pretty bad in those older stories. And I mean, it's a testament to how iconic those characters were that have allowed them to survive for so long and go through so many changes. But there's a reason I don't spend my money on those big, and they're beautiful. They're beautifully bound books. Those
Yeah.
big DC Golden Age omnibuy, with those
Yeah.
Frank Cho covers. They're gorgeous looking books, and they
Yeah.
would look phenomenal on a shelf. But I would never read them.
And even if you want like retro style art, like you can just look at people like Doc Shaner and Michael Cho and all those other like kind of, and even Darwin Cook, even though he's not with us anymore, like he's the definition of like a retro style artist.
Yeah, well, I mean, JT, if you want a good, speaking of Darwin Cook, if you want a good kind of feel for the atmosphere of the Golden and Silver Age, but with a modern sensibility, Darwin Cook's DC: The New Frontier is. I think you could make a point of saying that it's one of the greatest comic book stories ever told. So,
I would also recommend James Robinson's The Golden Age that came out in the 90s. That's really good too.
Yeah, so there are two great recommendations. Stories that give you the kind of vibe of the Golden and Silver Age with a little bit more modern storytelling sensibilities. So, JT, I hope that helps. But yeah, let's break into our final two picks for greatest comic book adaptations. Unless was Batman '89 your pick?
I guess. I mean, you can say that. I'll have one more. That's fine. I think the Batman '89 thing was just an aside to me. But yeah, you can do your pick, then I'll do my last pick. Then we just wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of what I would want to be my last one. If you have yours in mind, you can go first. But
yeah, it's hard for me. There's so many good comic book movies.
I mean, you had mentioned it prior, and no, I don't really want to use that one as my last one. It's tough. It's really tough. I'm like just looking back on my bookshelf, trying to kind of think it through. I'm trying to think. I mean, how can we not talk about the Avengers movie?
Yep.
I mean, Iron Man was phenomenal. And I think I like Iron Man more than I like the Avengers movie. But it accomplished so many things that we thought impossible in cinema.
Yeah.
And the way that, Joss Whedon and the creative team on that film were able to make such a large ensemble book work and to be so well received by the public. And the amount of risk that they took to put that movie out after, just starting up that cinematic universe, I think is incredible. And it was a testament to their understanding of the cinematic audience and of where they wanted to go with those characters.
Oh, yeah, totally. Like, again, like this is going to sound so repetitive, but everybody says it, like you wouldn't expect a cinematic universe to be built off of Iron Man. I think we said that before, but just how, and even when I first saw Iron Man when I was 10 years old in May of 2008, like I didn't even stay for the after credits.
I did, but that was also because I was in on the AC/DC that they played during the credits.
Yeah. I like when the movie's over, it's like, oh, it's just a movie. I'm just gonna leave the theaters. And then like you hear the talk, oh, did you see it? Did you see the after credit scene? I'm like, what after credit scene? I didn't know there was an after credit scene. Yeah. And of course, like right when I got the DVD, I just skipped to the after credit scene.
And it was like Avengers was the first of them to break $1 billion.
Yeah.
But it was after Avengers that really, I think, the exponential appeal of those characters and of that universe really started to skyrocket. I mean, they had a couple of misses after the Avengers, kind of trying to figure out what they were going to do after that. But with that being said, you look at the box office for the Phase One films pre Avengers, and they all did pretty well.
Yeah.
But Avengers just set a precedent.
Yeah. It just blew up. It's one of the most influential comic book movies, just because like it blew up so much, and like no one, because the Avengers was the B team, like the A team, as you said before, is the X-Men.
Yep.
And at that point the X-Men fizzled out because of Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like they came like, I don't want to say that because First Class came out a year before Avengers, so they're still getting their. And I love First Class; it's my favorite X-Men movie. But yeah, it's just how they balanced it, and of course, like Joss Whedon's kind of a, I don't want to say a pariah, but he's kind of a controversial figure now, just with all like the stuff with Justice League and like all the stuff that's come out with like him on the set of Buffy and all that stuff, what he did with his female people there. But like he was a really good choice for Avengers. And like a lot of people forget that like Joss Whedon before Avengers, he wrote Astonishing X-Men. And even though I thought that, yeah, it's really good. Even though I thought the run kind of fell apart near the end, that's a great run of X-Men. But like all the characters were great. Loki was a really good villain. That's like, if Thor, the first Thor set like what Tom Hiddleston Loki was going to be, like Avengers, like by the time Avengers came out, like every girl was swooning over Tom Hiddleston. Like he was the
Chris Hemsworth.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that, like I said, that was the movie that I think truly brought the MCU into becoming a worldwide phenomenon instead of just kind of the American pop culture. And it set up so much of what was finally paid off, and it really established Kevin Feige's understanding and his roadmap of where he was going to go with this universe. I mean, that end credit scene was the first appearance of Thanos, and we didn't see him again for like another almost 8 years.
Yep. And also like for normal audience members like us who didn't start reading comics until like a year or two afterwards, we didn't know who Thanos was. We might have acted who we thought that who Thanos was, but we didn't know who Thanos was.
Yeah. No, 100%. It did so much, and it set up a lot of really important dynamics that would, be played with later. Obviously, what was done with establishing the relationship, the love and hate relationship between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers was incredible. And the way that they were able to start playing around with, how Chris Hemsworth's, sorry, too many Chris's in the MCU.
Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth's Thor and what they were going to be doing with him moving forward. I mean, it was like after Avengers, I feel like they had everybody's trust.
Oh, totally.
They survived, arguably, after Avengers, some of the worst movies in the MCU.
Yeah.
And they came back making better movies that were, even more well received financially and critically. It was just astounding. I mean, if it wasn't for a movie like Avengers, we wouldn't have gotten Guardians of the Galaxy. And the fact that they were able to make fucking Rocket Raccoon a household name is kind of incredible.
Yeah. And this is something that's kind of overlooked. And I know the MCU movies are kind of rightly criticized for having forgettable film scores because they're not really that memorable. But you have to put Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme up there with some of the most iconic superhero themes.
And I'm telling you, a lot of composers, if you were to ask them what makes an important score, it is that you're not actively thinking about it while you're listening to the movie, because it helps to set up the experience. right? It
Yep.
is kind of an unsung hero of the movie. And a lot of them will say that if you're paying too much attention to the score and not the movie, that the score isn't doing its job. So, that's just kind of a testament to what Alan Silvestri did.
Yep.
Sound is a very, very important quality in film. And what that film score, what Alan Silvestri was kind of continuously able to do throughout his time with the MCU was develop that Avengers score and was able to build on it. And by the time, you get to Endgame, when the Avengers theme starts up in the battlefield scene, after while the Avengers are actively assembling, you are like so overfilled with emotion, and that is important. That is a
Yep.
really crucial part and a really crucial role that a film score has to play.
Totally. Like it has to fit the mood. It has to fit like everything. And of course, it's like the first time that theme like comes up. Well, I think the first time is at the beginning of the movie, but like, of course, the most iconic scene in the movie is the 360 shot
Yeah.
that the score just swells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that there were just so many kind of working parts to the Avengers movie that they would reinterpret and reutilize in the MCU moving forward. And, where Robert Downey Jr.'s first Iron Man film really, really set the stage for everything, Avengers was the true turning point of the
Yep.
MCU. And, I am in the minority that don't put Avengers in my top 10 comic book movies of all time, but I can certainly, without a doubt, sing its praises for how important and how impactful it was to the overall genre of those films moving forward.
Yeah. I guess my last pick. Um, this is so hard. I have a few like dark horses, not like dark horse comics, but like dark horse. Um, I haven't read it because I don't read manga, but Edge of Tomorrow, the Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, fantastic sci-fi action movie. A lot of people don't know that it's an adaptation of a manga.
Yeah, I didn't know that until like 2 years ago, and I really
Yeah,
liked that movie when I went to see it.
yeah. It's like, of course, like I can't really judge it as an adaptation since I haven't read it, but to me, um, it's just a great movie. Like I think Tom Cruise plays off of Emily Blunt super well. The action is well done. Like Doug Liman is a great director. Doug Liman did Born Identity.
Hmm.
Um, Before that, well, Born Identity was like in 2001, but it's so hard for me to pick like a book because like I guess I could say I don't know if this is a hot take, but Aquaman that came out in 2018
That's
because
interesting.
I know you can criticize Aquaman till the cows come home because like yes, the script isn't that like the script is kind of uneven. Some of the dialogue is really cheesy. Um, but to me, what it did well was that it took the base of Jeff Johns' New 52 Aquaman. And what it did is that it added influences of like Indiana Jones and even like some Silver Age Aquaman. And to me, it's one of the most unapologetic comic book movies, especially in that last hour or 45 minutes with that huge action scene underwater.
Yeah.
It's awesome to me.
I really enjoyed that movie, and literally a minute ago when you started saying it, I was like, but the more I think about it, the more I start to give that movie credit, just because of again, it was one of those situations where it totally changed. I mean, it completely flipped the public perception of Aquaman on its head. Aquaman was
Yeah,
a joke. Every kind of major um, kind of portrayal of geeks talking about Aquaman was always in a joking
yeah,
way. I mean,
yeah. Family
Aquaman,
Guy, Entourage, all those like
Big
made fun
Bang
of
Theory.
Aquaman. Big Bang Theory, yeah,
I mean, even I mean, the Super Friends Aquaman on a seahorse became a meme.
Yeah.
You know, or I'm sorry, riding two seahorses. I mean, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy
Yep, I was just about to mention that. It's
was
the
yeah,
riff on Aquaman. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, you make great points. That movie's not perfect. It had a decent amount of issues, but what it was able to do, and it turned, you know, Jason Momoa's Aquaman into an icon in a way that Aquaman has never been received before.
Yeah.
And one thing that I gave that movie so much credit for is the CGI and
Oh
for
yeah.
the costume design.
The cousin. Yeah.
It was so unapologetically comic book. And you know, I don't claim to be the biggest Aquaman fan. I read Jeff Johns'
Yeah.
Aquaman run. I really enjoyed it. I've read bits of Peter David, but that moment when Arthur comes out in the orange and green
Oh,
scaled
it looks
suit,
so good.
I flipped my shit. And then when you
Yeah.
see Orm in the here's the thing. I was like, okay, we got Aquaman. Orm is just gonna have this weird, scaly looking thing that looks like he came from, you know, down deep, like he's a cold-blooded creature of the depth. And
Yep.
he comes out, and it is again the perfect spitting image of Ocean Master from the
Yeah.
comics.
Like,
And it just blew my mind.
and what's crazy about that movie is that it escalates because first, like, like Arthur throughout the movie is just like in a t-shirt and jeans or pants, but it escalates because after like first you get Black Manta, and Black Manta is just awesome in that movie. He doesn't really have that much to do, but like and like to me, I just love how all the actors just have fun with it. Like Patrick Wilson, who played Orm in that movie, he just looked like he was having a ball. He was just like yelling his face off in that movie. But
Yeah.
like you start out with Black Manta, and he just looks like Black Manta, and then you see Ocean Master, and like, oh my God, Ocean Master, and then it's like, and the coup de grace is when Aquaman comes out with the green, like with the orange and green.
Yeah, and you know, better films have come out in the last third of their movie and had horrible CGI. I mean, we talked about Wonder Woman. Black Panther is certainly well known for
Yeah,
the final fight between T'Challa and Killmonger, which, I mean, Black Panther easily could have been a discussion topic for this
yeah,
conversation. But
yeah,
the way Aquaman is able to pull off that level of visual effects on that scale as the third act, I mean, throughout it was solid, but it was incredible. They did
yeah.
not skip a
It
beat
was
at
it,
all.
it was like I know you're not a big Lord of the Rings fan,
Mm.
but like I have no stake in that. I think Lord of the Rings, like I don't hate Lord of the Rings. I don't like I haven't really watched Lord of the Rings that much, but that whole last battle with like Aquaman and Orm and their armies just felt so huge, like a battle from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so epic. And I think that was an interesting kind of dark horse to end the stream on, man. You had a
Yeah,
lot of really fun ones that I like because I don't think anybody else really would have brought some of those up. So I really
yeah.
enjoyed kind of getting your takes on those. So thanks for joining me, man. It was a good time.
It was yeah. It's always a good time talking with you, and I always try to when with you and Boom, I always try to be in the chat and talk to people and stuff.
Yeah,
But
you're
it's
always
great to it's
you're
great
always
to see you
you're always
face to face.
you're always a big presence in the chat, man. We really appreciate you when you come around and give your input. It's very deliberate and it's very well measured. And you know, and for those of you that are watching, like this is the Taylor Pector with the Green Lantern Rebirth, you know, profile photo that is always in the live chat. So
Yep.
now you can put a face to the name. But you know, I wanna thank everybody for watching, whoever came live, and for everybody who's going to be watching this on demand. If you ended up enjoying this, please do me a big solid and leave a like. Subscribe down to the channel as well for more content like this. And of course, you can check both of us out on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are moving throughout the bottom of the screen there, but you can also find links to them in the description below, as well as Taylor's articles for the comics bookcase. They are really, really well meditated. So I highly advise you guys checking those out if you want some good reads surrounding comics. I don't know if you're ready to tease it, but do you want to give the folks a little bit of a tease on what your next article might?
Um It's
working on?
about a certain British magician.
Ah, interesting. Well, you heard it here, folks. A little bit of a spoiler for Taylor's next article, so make sure you guys go check them out. And Taylor, is there anything you want to say to the people at home?
No, just happy to be on here again, and it's always great having a conversation with you.
Absolutely, man. Same here. So thanks again, Taylor, for joining me. Thank you to everybody watching. And this has been another great episode of Let's Talk Comics, and we will catch you guys in the next episode. Jesus. Thank you for watching.